In this next video, we're starting on page number 3, and on the top of page number 3, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a kind of a temporary terrain model. And the reason we're creating that temporary terrain model is we're going to create a chain and profile that go around the end vent and wing walls, and we need a profile that represents the proposed surface. And so we're going to create a terrain model from the model itself, and then we're going to create a chain that kind of goes around the location of the wing walls and end vent, and then we're going to create a profile from that terrain model. So to do that, what we're going to do on step number 11 is we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it the job number graphic filter.dgn. And this has to be a 3D file because we're storing a terrain model in it. So we're going to go ahead and change our seed file. And our seed files are located under CAD Standards, Seed Files, Design English, and if you go about 2/3 of the way down, we're looking for the one called iProject 3D Power GeoPak. We're going to open that as just read only, and it'll set that down here at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and give it the correct name. We're going to call it J2P 3081 underscore graphic underscore filter .dgn. And the reason we're calling it graphic filter is we're going to actually use a graphic filter to create that terrain model. So once you have that all set in there or defined like I have, go ahead and hit OK. It's going to create that 3D file. We're going to check in our corridors file. Once this opens up, we're going to go ahead and reference in a couple files. We're going to reference in the corridor file. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go to the reference dialog. We're going to do a tools attach. We're going to select the corridors file again. We're going to hit add. We're going to hit OK. We're going to reference in its default model. And when we do a 3D function in this file, it will automatically bring in its 3D component or 3D model as well. So we just close that down. We're going to do a fit view. We're going to select, in step number C here, we're going to select the create terrain model by graphic filter. But before we do that, I want to kind of explain what a graphic filter is and how it works. And so before I do that, I'm going to go to our create template dialog. And in here, we have a bunch of points, but each one of these points, if you open them up, has a feature definition applied to it. And you can see right here, here's the feature definition called excess ground proposed. And so what this graphic filter is going to do is it can search for feature definitions. And when it finds it from one template to the next, say we have this excess ground proposed in our graphic filter that it's looking for, or it has the graphic filter has the feature definition in it that it's looking for, it will connect those together in a terrain model. Also, I want to point out that we're going to have a boundary on this terrain model, and it's looking for endpoints or slope stake points. For example, this one here, if I open this one up, it has a different feature definition called excess LOC, which is the limits of construction. And so when it finds these from cross-section to cross-section or template drop to template drop, it will connect those with a break line and use a break line, or not a break line, but a boundary feature to limit the triangles on the outside. Okay, so just be aware that each point in your template library has a feature definition applied to it. And so the tool that we're going to use is under the terrain model. It's this one right here, but before we get into that one, again, I want to kind of explain the graphic filters and how they're set up. This one is the create terrain model by graphic filter, but there is another graphic filter tool called the graphic filter manager, and this is where you actually can create graphic filters. And if you click on that, you'll see that we have several graphic filters already set up. And the one that we're going to be using is one called Proposed Finish Grade with Boundary. So this one is made up, this is a graphic filter group, and it's made up of two separate graphic filters. And so the first one is the proposed finish grade graphic filter. And if you look over to the right, you can actually look at how it's created. And so we can go ahead and hit edit filter. And if we edit the filter, you can see how what it's composed of. And so you can define graphic filters by colors, levels, element types, all the way down to elevations. We at MoDOT set up a couple graphic filters using the civil features or feature definitions. And again, this filter that we're looking at is the one that's going to create the boundary or the boundary limit. And so it's looking for those limit of construction points and all those points on the very outside of your template. So we can just hit cancel that. And then the other one, this is the boundary for the design. Here is the actual proposed finished grade one with all the feature definitions that it's looking for inside the template area, or in the roadway and the shoulder and stuff like that. And if we hit that filter, or we edit that filter, you can see it's got a lot more feature definitions. It's got 31, and it's looking for all these filters or all these feature definitions. And these are all feature definitions that are along the surface of your template. So we can go ahead and hit cancel of that. And so these two individual graphic filters make up the graphic filter group that we're going to use, called Proposed Finish Grade with Boundary. So I'm just going to close out of that, and we're going to go over to the tool that we're going to use to create this terrain model, called the Create Terrain Model by Graphic Filter. It's the first row, third icon over. If we click it, you'll see as soon as we clicked it, our 3D reference came in, because this tool uses a 3D function. It needs to have the 3D model of the corridor file in there. So if I go back to my reference dialog, you'll see that as soon as I clicked the Create Template by Graphic Filter, it automatically added in the 3D model of the corridor file. Okay. Now once this tool is open, the first thing that you want to do is you want to select your graphic filter group. And so using the three dots up here, we're going to click on that. And the one again that we're going to use is it's a group, and we want this one right here called, if you didn't see that, let me click it again. It's the, boy, it's hard to see. Yeah, this one right here, Design Proposed Finish Grade with Boundary. This one right here. Okay. Once you have that selected, you could go into the Terrain Filter Manager and look at that graphic filter and how it's created. But we kind of did that earlier. But for one thing you really want to do when you create a terrain model from a graphic filter is you want to definitely hit the preview button, because what this will do is when you click on the preview button, it'll go out to your template and identify all the points that are in the filter and then highlight them. And so if I go ahead and do that, you can see it's getting my limits of construction on both sides, and it's getting my template points on the surface, my edge of pavement, the shoulder, my widening, my center line. And so it's going to join all those points together as a break line, and then once the break lines are defined, it's going to create the terrain model from those break lines. And so all I need to do is kind of follow the heads up prompt. It says triangulation option edge method. Since we're using a boundary, you can leave this set to none, because the boundary is going to define basically the edge method. It's not going to allow the triangles to go outside the break lines on the outer limits of your model. So we're just going to hit none to that, and we're going to just data point to accept the selection. And then when you do that, you can see that the terrain model is created. Now, one thing I forgot to do in this dialog is I forgot to set the feature definition. and give it a name. But if you did that ahead of time, that's fine. You're ahead of the game. But no worries, because what we can do is we can just hit F4. We can select this terrain model and just bring up its properties. And in the properties, we can go to where it says feature name and give it a name. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And the name that we wanted to give it is, we're going to give it the job number, J2P 3081. And then we're going to do a space terrain model, or terrain from graphic filter. I'm going to just tab that in. And now I can also set the feature definition here. And for this feature definition, we're going to do design triangles, because the terrain model is created from your model, your design model. So we're going to go in there and we're going to go into terrain display. And the design ones are at the top. The existing feature definitions for terrains are down at the bottom. And so we're going to go in there and we're going to look for one called design triangles. And it's this one right here. And when you set it, it should have a gold symbology to the triangle legs. Now it wants us to go ahead and just turn off the references and just rotate your terrain model around, take a look at what it looks like. So we're going to go back to the reference dialog. We're just going to turn off the display. You can leave them referenced in there, or you could detach them if you wanted to. So we're in a 3D file here, so we're going to go ahead and rotate this around. We're going to snap the view rotation center onto one of the triangle legs, and we're going to rotate it, and you should get what your model looks like in a triangle format now. Okay, and again, what we're going to do is we're going to take this terrain model and we're going to utilize it to create a proposed profile around the end bent location. Okay, so to do that, to define that end bent location, in step number 12, it says create a horizontal and vertical civil element around the end bent corridor. And so what we need to do first is we're going to open up our plan view. So we need to do a file open, or you can go to ProjectWise and just select the file. So if we go to our data folder, we just double click on plan, it should open that file up, ask us to check in the graphic filters. There's our plan file. Here's our kind of our end bent limits of, you can say call it limits of construction, but it's just our kind of our how we're defining where the wing wall is, where the end bent face is, and then the other wing wall. Okay, so we're going to use a tool called use the horizontal geometry complex by PI tool, and we're going to basically trace around the end bent in a counterclockwise direction. We're going to use a radius of 0, and we're going to use the feature definition called Bridge Approach Slab 503-10. So let's go ahead and open up the Complex by PI tool. It's in our horizontal geometry tools. And if you go right here, here's the Complex by PI tool. It's in the second last row, second icon over. We go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go ahead and remember this time to define the feature definition ahead of time, so I'm going to select that. Again, the one that we're looking for is the Bridge Approach Slab 503-10. It's located under Design Standards. So we're under Design Standards, and then Safety and Structure. So we can close down Geometry, slide down to Safety and Structures, and we're looking for that again. We're looking for that Bridge Approach Slab. So let's go ahead and slide down. It's this one right here, 503-10. The other Bridge Approach Slab is, let me see here, what's the difference between them? They look like they've got the same name. Let's see here. 503-10 on that one. Oh, this one is 503-10.10. what we want is 10.00, which we already had selected there. So that's good to go. Let's see if it asks for us to put a name in there, and it does. It says name it nvent1. So we're going to override the name that was in there by default. We're going to call this n, and we use underscores bent, and then 1. We want to make sure our radius is set to 0. And so all we got to do now is we got to come up, and we're just going to we're going to AccuSnap to the end of this point. We're going to come down, we're going to AccuSnap to that point. We're going to come over, we're going to AccuSnap to that point, and then we're going to come up, and we're going to AccuSnap to that point. And then once we get done, we're just going to right click to stop it. We're going to hit F4, and you should be able to see that you have a civil feature all the way around the nvent location. One of the last things we need to do in step 12, we're going to create the profile now. And so in step number C, we're going to reference in that graphic filter that we just created. So we're going to go up to the reference dialog. We're going to do a tools attach. We're going to select the graphic filter. We're going to attach it. We're going to hit OK. We're going to close down our reference dialog. Now it's starting to get a little cluttered, but you can still kind of see the nvent right here. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to create that profile. So we're going to open up the profile model of this civil feature called nvent1. We're going to go over to the second icon in the heads-up prompt. I'm going to come down and select window number 8, and then I'm going to click in window number 8. And there's our profile view. Now we don't have a profile yet. We're going to get it here in a second. Okay, in step number D, we opened up the profile model, so now we're going to move on down to step number 13, and we're going to use the vertical geometry tool called Quick Profile from Surface to create the profile from the graphic filter. To create that profile, we're going to go to our vertical geometry tools, and we're going to again use the one called Quick Profile from Surface, which is in the first row, fourth icon over. And so all you need to do on that is just click on that tool, follow the heads up prompt. It says locate the reference surface, which is going to be our terrain model. So we're going to left click on that and then reset the complete. And when you do that, you might need to come down to your profile window and then do a fit view. Once that view is updated, you can see the crown and the roadway. And then you can also see the elevations of the what would be considered the wing wall location of the nvent, which would be this location right here. So it's going kind of back down the roadway, and that's why you get such a flat slope, because it's just running along the roadway. Where they're here in the middle, we got the crown of the roadway in the middle. So now what we're going to do, now that we got our profile created, but first, before we move on, we're going to make sure we name this profile. So we're going to hit F4. We're going to come into the profile view. We're going to go to the properties, and we're going to select the feature name, which we're going to call it proposed. And then the last thing we're going to do before we get out of this file is we're going to go ahead and set it as the active profile. And you can leave this open or closed. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is in step 14, we're going to open up the corridor file. And in there, we're going to add in some more corridor references to some plan view elements. So let's go ahead and open up the corridor file. You can either do File Open, or you can go to Window ProjectWise and then just double click on the corridor file. We're going to check in the plan file. Okay. And what we're going to do in this step is we're going to actually add in the traffic control barrier lines, which are these red lines along the edge of the wing wall of the vent on both sides. And so when we turn these on, what's going to happen, as we discussed earlier when we reviewed the bridge approach pavement, is that in there's a display rule, and when that display rule gets toggled on, barriers will show up in your model. So to do that, to activate these as a corridor reference, again, you just have to find a corridor grip. Here's one. You just have to slide over to the corridor references, click on the arrow down, and select the first icon, which is add a corridor reference. And so it's going to ask you to first select the first reference. I'm going to select the next reference, and then when I'm done, I'm going to reset to complete, which is a right click. And once that's done in your model, you should get some barriers showing up. Okay. In the next step, what we're going to do, and I'm going to have to rotate this to the kind of plan view, or not the plan view, but a top view. So I'm going to make my 2D view active. I'm going to click on the rotate view. I'm going to go to a top view. And what we're going to try to do is, you can see our widening is consistent all the way down. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to make that widening narrower as it gets closer to the bridge approach pavement here. And we're going to make it the same width as this barrier here. And so we're going to just kind of narrow that up as we go. And we're going to do the same thing on this side as well. So we're going to just kind of leave it in the top view here so we can kind of see that when we apply the parametric constraint, that widening does get narrower. Okay, so to do that, we're going to go back to I'm going to hit F4 to clear out all my tools. We're going to apply a parametric constraint to the corridor, so all we have to do is go to a corridor grip again. We're going to slide over to the hammer or the corridor creation tools. We're going to slide down to the big question mark, which is the create parametric constraint tools. We're going to bring that up. Okay. So if you look in step number 16, we got the values that you're going to need for this adjusting of this this widening. And so we're going to do the one on the left side first. And the one on the left side first, we're going to have a start station of 71 plus 87.89. And then it's going to stop at 7197.89. It's just a 10-foot transition. So we're going to type in 71 plus 97.89. We're going to lock those two values in. The constraint label that we're looking for is the left guardrail widening width. We're going to go to our down arrow. It's that one right there. And you can see it puts in the default values of just under 4 feet. We're going to put in, for the stop value, we're going to bring that down to a distance of 1.34 feet, which is the same width as that barrier. And so all we have to do now is we just have to go out and left click through all the prompts. And if you look in your model on the left side, you should see that your widening gets narrower. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the right side. And the values are different from the left to the right because there's a skew on this bridge, and so we're going to have to put in a slightly different value. So the start value on the right side is 72 plus 00.52. The end value is, again, just 10 foot down, so 72 plus 10.52. And we're going to switch it to the right constraint label, so we're looking for the right guardrail widening width. Again, our stop value, we want that to be 1.34, this time a positive value because it's on the right side. And again, once you have that all set, all you have to do is go out and left click through all your prompts and look at your 3D model and see that it is truly transitioning in to meet that guardrail. Okay. So with that, that ends this video and ends page number 3 in the manual. And with the next video, we're going to start working with adjusting more of the guardrail widening and then eventually adding guardrail.